Hi folks, I'm Ignatiy Vishnevetsky.
I'm Alex Dowd.
Today we're talking about Skyscraper, starring The Rock himself, Dwayne Johnson.
Welcome to Film Club.
A few months ago we had Rampage, a disaster monster movie where The Rock played an ex-Special Forces primatologist. It's a career path. And now we've got Skyscraper, in which he is a skyscraper security expert of some kind who used to be an FBI agent before a hostage rescue mission gone wrong. Even though, you know, as we learn, he runs his business out of a garage, he's been contracted to do
the biggest building in the world.
To assess security
substantially
for the biggest building in the world, which is this huge 3,500 foot skyscraper in Hong Kong called the Pearl, which for some reason has this big holodeck-like dome at the top of it, which really serves no purpose except to give this movie a Lady from Shanghai style funhouse finale, which I'm a sucker for.
Chekhov's House of Mirrors, I believe, is what we refer to that phenomenon. The movie Skyscraper is essentially another in the storied tradition of Die Hard knockoffs. In this case, actually, most Die Hard knockoffs take it to a new location, put it on a train or on an airplane. This is Die Hard in a taller building, essentially.
You've got The Rock playing what's become his established persona. I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but the problem with The Rock is that he's just too big to play. Like, nobody gets that big by accident.
Yeah.
You know, like, he has to have some kind of past that would explain why this man is so built. It's not like Schwarzenegger where they would just kind of wave it away and pretend like that was a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, he basically has Superman's physique.
Yeah,
and it's often, I find it very charming sometimes the way these films will attempt to give him some vulnerability. In this case, the only way that we can ever buy that there's any chance he won't win is they've given him a prosthetic leg,
which he does get to beat someone with a few times.
Yeah.
And it's actually a nice detail because The Rock is an all right actor. He's a pretty good actor. And I often wish the downtime in these films lasted a little bit longer because
I mean he's sort of the marquee appeal of something like this, and that was true of Rampage too. Which even though his co-stars in the film were giant rampaging monsters, he was still sort of the main draw, and I think that's the case with Skyscraper too. But Skyscraper doesn't really give us that much time with him, particularly as a comic personality either. This is one of his, not one of his funnier performances.
And not one of his more exciting performances. I mean, it is a lot of jumping from one thing to another. This is not the most strikingly staged disaster movie ever made. It's directed by Ross and Marshall Thurber, who's done action comedy, which is kind of adjacent, but which with Central Intelligence also starring The Rock or co-starring The Rock, but the action scenes in that film were a mess. This is, I think, actually something of an improvement to like journeyman work.
Sure. Well, and I think that it's kind of a shame because I think that the central setting, this very large building, there's a lot of things you can do with that. For the most part, this movie does not really give us a very clear picture of the geography of this building. You have this enormous skyscraper that's 200 floors or something.
But the plot really takes place in just 2 floors.
Right, exactly. You have all that real estate, literal real estate, and the movie confines it to a couple of floors, essentially. And I mean, some of the best sequences in this film are ones that play on The Rock being in a very precarious situation where he has to leap from a crane onto a building or from one area.
The blades of a wind turbine.
Right. They sort of play on that, on a sort of collective fear of enormous heights. But I don't feel like this is staged in such a way where the full suspense of those set pieces really comes through. I kept thinking back to that great scene in the 4th Mission Impossible movie in Ghost Protocol and how well that's staged. I mean, obviously part of that is that Cruise is really up there on that building. And most of Skyscraper, especially the stuff with the building, is shot on green screen. So it just doesn't convey that sense of altitude in the same way.
And it just doesn't, I think, invent enough to kind of make up for those shortcomings. It's not that much fun.
It's a pretty lazy movie, I think, in a lot of respects. I mean, it's following the Die Hard template in a lot of ways. I mean, the villains are total generic Euro trash bad guys, you know, no distinguishing characteristics whatsoever. Their motivation makes very little sense. It's very convoluted, actually, in some ways.
I'm going to throw your daughter off the roof.
So we don't even really get when The Rock inevitably kicks somebody out of, you know, the 200th floor or something. We don't even get that brief surge of righteous pleasure from it because the villains are nobodies.
The movie doesn't really get a lot out of the Skyscraper. I feel like it gets a little bit more out of the fact that it's set in Hong Kong, which mostly gives it an opportunity to ape some Hong Kong genre staples. There's an okay early kind of hand-to-hand fight in a kitchen.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed
it's not bad.
One of the better scenes in a movie about a giant skyscraper was a hand-to-hand fight.
Yeah, it was a fight between two dudes in a kitchen. Is somehow not in the Skyscraper even, is somehow one of the better scenes in this film. But mostly the staple that it really mimics the most are just exposition delivered by cops inside some kind of crisis center. You get a lot of Hong Kong cops telling us everything that's going on.
Yeah, but even that was like really lazily handled. Like, you know, if you're going to do a Die Hard ripoff, you really have to get us at least a little invested in the cops who don't believe that the good guy is a good guy or are skeptical about it. This movie can't even really be bothered to spend any time with those characters.